So the left is would we say the left is in last place as far as moving on from COVID, like the actual left?
Well, here's okay. I'm glad you brought that up, the actual left, because I think this is a good jumping off point for discussing what's going on today. Because there is a very important phenomenon that does not get enough credit or research into, because I think a lot of people's, I don't know what affinity they have for these people, but there's a huge problem today with the fake left. And what I would describe as the fake left as the pretty obvious plants. Like it's so bad with the billionaire foundation people, as you can see, and they put in their Twitter bios where they're like, I work for at NGO, I work for at like quote unquote movement or whatever. And you follow the money and you realize very quickly that this is an astroturf. You know, this is nothing to do with left values. These people are not connected to a union. They're not connected to, you know, they're not connected to a community. It's like they've been brought up by these foundations and organizations. And you know, this is where I need to plug my favorite journalist right now, Corey Morningstar. Everyone has to read everything by her, because this is another reason why what's going on right now is because the left, well, people who are not well versed with history and that tend to jump on and jump into these Democrat NGO psyops, where all the corporate political factors all come together. And when you don't understand that and you can't see that, I believe at that point, when you're not, you can't tell if you're witnessing history or if you're watching a PR commercial, because I don't know what we're dealing with right now in Canada. It's a really, really sad situation with
That's right. You're
right
in
now.
That totally changes the whole trajectory of this episode.
It's not Memorial Day.
It's not actually.
He had to work.
Right
He had to work. He's like, I have to work. I was like, what kind of sicko corporation do you work at? And he's like, oh, that's Canada.
Canada's a sicko corporation.
From the 5 to the 6, we be in the mix with that rare candy paint job on the whip. I need food for the kids, money for the rent. Fuck a lockdown, baby, I can't do that shit. And I don't never vote, cause I'm fucking broke. And either way, I know the police ain't gon' leave me alone. On a plane by to visit Glen Rock, need crypto, told me I should bring the Glock with me. So I packed up my piece and I'm sliding. Cause we might get caught up in a riot. Middle finger Trump, middle finger Biden. Fuck a left, fuck a right, is you riding? Know you love to see it, dudes rocking. Ain't no politics, baby, we just talking. From the birds to the bricks, we be in the mix with that rare candy paint job on the whip. Who you with?
Right now, there's a huge international news about a mass grave being uncovered by a Catholic residential school, where the Canadian government and so basically the Canadian government used to, well, the last one closed in 1996, so this is not like that far back.
Okay.
But basically my point was, what we're seeing today is we're seeing the very, very real tragedy going on, where there is a real genocide going on against Indigenous peoples. But then at the same time, we see almost a parallel, not real movement going on at the exact same time. So as you can see, it's these things like, and this is why, you know, the left is ultimately right on this. I mean, I speak to rightists about this and they can't understand that there's like, yes, there's a real struggle going on, like a real like national liberation struggle going on with Indigenous peoples. But then there's also Warren Buffett funding NGOs in Standing Rock to, you know, tell Indigenous people. I mean, he brought down Mark Ruffalo, not Warren Buffett personally, but the NGOs brought in Mark Ruffalo to tell Indigenous people. This is all covered in Corey Morningstar's amazing piece on Standing Rock about how he's in there telling Indigenous warriors not to fight. He says, you know, nonviolence is the way, and, you know, turn the other cheek and all that crap. So what we're seeing with the left today, I think, is that they're conflating real left principles with the fake left NGO PR campaigns. And because they can't see the difference between the two, a lot of it gets lumped in together. And like, that's kind of what I've been seeing, at least, because there's so many obvious things going on, like people losing their jobs, billionaires making a ton of money, but for whatever reason, this gets sidetracked into the NGO sphere, where people who have been very suspect for a very long time. I mean, if you look at their records on other issues, like 9/11 being a big one, they are very, very much so on the the official story.
Yeah.
So whatever you think about it, they're like the quote unquote like left gatekeeper like type people follow the official story. So I think that's what we're seeing today, where in Canada there's indigenous graves, indigenous mass graves. One was uncovered, probably all over the place there's more, but the left, so to speak, even though indigenous people, like, I mean, if in Canada, if you have an indigenous friend, they'll tell you about like the mass graves. That's not like it was relegated to urban myth. And a very important establishment type out here, he wrote a horrible opinion piece talking about how if you think there's mass graves, you're on the same level as like Masonic conspiracies and 9/11 conspiracies and all that. So and that's what I'm trying to get at here, is this like, there's the fake left, which is like this guy who's clearly like some kind of like law enforcement officer type, posing as a journalist, writing that, oh, if you think that the Canadian state would kill a bunch of kids, you're a crazy person. Like, that's not like, no left person would tell you that. Maybe a real left person would tell you like, oh, what evidence is there, or what do we know about the situation? Who's like, bringing this up, versus these people who are like basically emphatically saying like, this is happening exactly like the TV is telling you. And I think that's what we're here. I don't think there's anything wrong with people's like left principles. I just think that they've conflated the TV with reality, and what people are like yelling about, like on CNN, where they have like the crazy footage of people like dying, like in Wuhan, the guy like just passing out, dying, and like I don't know why people say, oh, if you see something like that in like in one of these quote unquote, like for the flag head waving anti-imperialist people, that will like never ever doubt anything from those countries. But then of course when the mainstream media says something here, like you're going to believe that right away. So not entirely sure. I don't know, maybe you guys have experienced something like this where these like where it's a totally spectacle but is accepted in left circles.
Oh, that's like our whole podcast.
That's why we're here.
It's literally I was like, from the start I was kind of, we were like, what is happening here? Why is it so easy to fool people of in these circles is my
the left persuasion. Why I think it's
like the Charlie Brown Lucy holding football thing. It's literally that. Like, I know it's a tired thing, but it's true. It's like, what's going on? And you just sent me and definitely not someone we respect for sure, but I feel Professor Richard Wolff.
We'll
tweet. We can get in that later. But
he
is like, like the whole perspective is like, all we needed to do was do it a little bit differently, and things would have been fine. But it was these damn massage parlors, or these
they buy the mainstream narrative in real time, and then after it doesn't work, right? Like, it doesn't favor working class people, doesn't favor indigenous people, doesn't favor marginalized groups or anything. They're like, we didn't do it right. Like the government didn't do it right, the state didn't do it right. And it's basically zero liability for them. It's
absolutely
it's what American capitalism is, and maybe Canada's like this too, where it's you work for a company under capitalism. They're going to find every single way to transfer liability onto the worker, right? You messed up. You didn't wear your safety glasses. You messed up. You did this. And that's what the left does in terms of COVID, right? Like that's why they're almost infallible.
It's a personal failure. It's always
infallible, but they don't win anything. It's like, it's the weirdest thing in the world. Like,
well, that's what I was going to say. It's like, when you're always, and let's be honest, it's definitely rough times for the, if you never get any concessions from any politician or anything like that, and you're always on the quote unquote losing side, you get kind of used to that. And you're not used to being accountable. You learn, where you're like, oh shit, I actually have power now. What do I do? And then you become the thing that you proclaim to hate oftentimes, and, but it's super interesting how, I mean, and we've talked about this before. It's like, if your conspiracy takes like 5 years out, what good is that? And, it's like, and like, I have like friends and family that are like really into conspiracy stuff, but it's always the safe ones that are like, people are hitting me up now being like, oh man, like Epstein, you were right about that shit. That's crazy, dude. And the last he's dead.
That's and I was like, here I am like, fuck kids.
I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, here I'm like, literally, I swear to God, I'm not even like 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like pulling my hair out. Like, am I insane? Like, I'm like, you wake up to that reality and you're like, is this just like, am I literally crazy, or is this something that's actually happening? So it's just the way it goes. I've learned it's just the way it goes, and it's our curse of like us, us three. Like we just, I don't know, for some reason, like we just kind of hop onto this stuff sooner than I'm not trying to like
a deeper skepticism.
Others. Yeah, we're not willing to. Yeah, I'm not trying to like pump up our sales or anything.
No, and that's the thing too, is that people make it, and this is another issue we're seeing, is that people make it like I'm the lone person who sees through it. But like I didn't know you guys before, but we could all kind of see eye to eye on this stuff. And I think if more people were allowed to come together, in church in Canada, is like there's still like massive restrictions and such, and it's I believe that's exactly to stop kind of people coming together and like talking about things and be like, hey, a lot of this stuff isn't adding up. There's like so many vaccines, everyone's got a vaccine, but then they've got a problem with getting them out to people, or there's some hesitancy. It's like, how can so many things be true at the same time, where we're like on the brink of like everything's going to shut down, but then like everything's it's and I think it's like, if you're talking to someone normally and not through a screen, you can kind of be like, oh, this is like, you're kind of, I think it's like your bullshit detector goes off a lot faster, and you're like, well, this just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think that's why the spectacle is so compelling. It's because now people have been, locked up for a year, and the only medium to any kind of communication is through, their screens, their phones.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And now they've, this is where you get your, quote unquote, trusted information for, COVID right away. Like, I mean, if you look into the Event 201 propaganda blitz, like that's what they talked about, was being the first with the message, right?
Well,
so it's like a lot.
Yeah, speak on that for people that don't.
Event 201. We haven't talked about that on this podcast. What is Event 201 before we get too far into that?
So Event 201 was a pandemic simulation of a coronavirus done at the Johns Hopkins.
Johns Hopkins, that's right.
Turn up.
Yeah, Bloomberg School for Health. I think it's like health security or something. So like very spooked up terms. I mean, like
you just dropped like 3 red flags in the one sentence.
Yeah, billionaire, university, and something to do with security.
Yeah. All sounds great. Where can I sign up?
Yeah, and so it's really good. It's like a 12-minute video of like the highlights, and they really do go through like all their ideas of how to deal with things as they come up. So it's like a pretty good simulation of like the way things actually went down. So I mean, to me personally, that just kind of like, it's kind of like the same thing with the 9/11 like practice run before. So I'm just and that's another thing too, pattern recognition. For whatever reason, patterns, you just can't look at patterns anymore. Like you can't just see like, oh, simulation, the event, they kind of like seed it into everyone's mind in the media like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years before. Then the thing happens, and then it's like, kind of like, oh, who could have seen this coming? And it's like, well, didn't we have like 10 years of like nonstop zombie movies? I don't know. It's just kind of
Yes, we did. That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's, I was, what's funny? I was literally, because I and embarrassingly enough, I am like a Walking Dead fan, the zombie show.
Perfect.
And I remember watching this. I remember like watching this shit. It's like fucking fear porn or whatever, right? And I remember watching it and being like, is this foreshadowing, or is this some weird Hollywood kind of ploy? Like I was like, because I'm like, this is a super obvious kind of stuff. And is there something deeper going on here? Is this some, what's really happening in real life here? Sorry to cut you off, but
no, that's really true, because I think what the point of a lot of this stuff was kind of like to seed into people's mind that's like absolute chaos, like rule of the jungle kind of stuff, like do not like care about your community, like everyone's out to get you, because that's kind of how people like on the left online kind of treat you, right? It's like like you're telling them this stuff because like you're trying to personally like ruin them, but it's like, well, I'm trying to inform you on this because this is kind of like the situation that we're all dealing with here, and not like this is like a me versus you thing. But and also there's the fact that like the CDC like has the whole zombie page, pandemic preparedness page, which is like kind of like their joke like pandemic, but it's like a little bit too on the nose, I think. And I think it's just a lot of these like the purge as well. That's another kind of idea where it's like, oh, imagine if there's no rules because something happened. And so it's just like seeding a lot of ideas, I think, into people's minds about these things. So it's like
life imitates art.
Or I mean, like think about 1984 George Orwell. He was a snitch ratting on communists. Aldous Huxley's father was like a Rhodes Council person. So like were these people like putting these Brave New World of Aldous Huxley, are they putting these in our minds because it's like, this is just my creative thoughts of what it could be, or is it like kind of like hinting at like, oh, this is what it'll be like, so like kind of prepare yourself for this kind of like
so
thinking.
Crazy. The George Orwell and Aldous Huxley. It's crazy being like a teenager and reading those books and being like, oh shit, this is fire. And then becoming an adult and like, wait, even they're compromised? Like what the fuck? It's just so crazy how it's like, what?
Well, and I think it's just because people on the left just like refuse to see like what the point of all this stuff is. Like, we answer why, like why go through all this trouble to like make people like somewhat aware of this stuff, and like why put through like all of these not just the movies, but like the science fiction and the cultural war stuff. Like, what's the point of all this stuff? And it's like, I think it's because people have turned their backs on Marxism for a huge part. They've kind of said that, oh, this is like a European ideology or something, or whatever other weird reasons to discount it. But it's, we need a materialist analysis. Like, why are there billions of dollars being spent on this research stuff? Like, what are they doing with your tax dollars? Like, who's paying all these people to do all this stuff? And if all this stuff that they're paying for is not accessible to you, like I got into an argument about there's MasterCard's trust stamp initiative, where cool. Yes, super trustworthy. Don't think twice about trust. I mean, you don't like trust? They have,
you don't like MasterCards?
It's in the name. Yeah.
Oh, and they're also working on fingerprint cards, by the way. So get ready for that one. Yeah.
Love it.
At fingerprint card.
Can they chill with changing the credit cards up for 5, like the chip and everything? It's just so moving too fast for me now. It's so crazy.
I know. We get like 50 years of evolution in like cash transactions in like a 5-year thing.
Yeah.
Like what?
And that was like kind of shows you the history of these ideas. Like this stuff is like all based on like an idea of like, having people in this completely controlled environment where, you have instead of, you paying with real money that like you get paid for through your job, you get it through social credit, and it's your obedience score, and like, these kinds of societal changes. And, this is what Marx kind of discusses. Like, he talks about like class struggle and like how the struggle is like won. And I don't think a lot of people view the world as like a struggle. Like every day is being like, the rulers trying to break our backs, because, they just, I guess if you look at the world, it's like a movie, you're kind of just waiting for the next act to happen. You're not like actively part of it. You're not like, your actions aren't influencing what's going on. You're a complete spectator in this. And rather than viewing it as a class struggle, it's kind of like, oh, this is the system and this is how things are. And like under capitalism, people, like it's like capitalists are like infected with this ghost that like, controls them to act for profit. But then you like point out all the times where like, things aren't profitable, like Amazon's not profitable. How do they make so much money? Jeff Bezos' grandfather from DARPA.
Yeah.
So maybe that has a little bit more to do with a little bit whatever plan.
Just ruin the entire like leftoid thing in about 3 seconds right there.
Yeah, but like just read the balance sheets. It's like they don't hide this stuff. Like I started reading some business press just because it's like oh, what's going on here, and you realize like, whoa, the world of the business press so different than like leftoid like essays about what people think things are going on. Like I found this. I'll find the link if I can. It's like from a Deutsche Bank report right at the end of 2020 talking about how like they just casually put like, oh, decades of worker gains have been reversed because of COVID. And it's like, well, like, it's not the virus that undid it. It's the laws that the legislators said that you don't have to follow the Civil Rights Act anymore because COVID. You don't have to follow the Americans with Disabilities Act because COVID. You don't have to worry about OSHA because COVID, because it's an emergency. And like, that right there is why it happens right there, because you have to accept that it's an emergency, and then you have to have people who are craven and corrupt enough in office to then write that's okay. And of course all this requires like some type of planning to get these like pieces in place, but of course that would require ascribing intent to the powerful, and that's not allowed because they have a ghost controlling them.
What you just said is I think the most important point of this whole thing, with the it's not, it wasn't the virus or whatever, it was our response to it. And but that line that is such a powerful little cheater headline when you're just like, because of COVID, unemployment or workers or whatever, X, right? follows that. And that's just not the reality of what happened. You know, it's like there's different places that have handled this differently. Every state, every jurisdiction is different, you know. So it's so like we have to make that distinction. And I see that's a big thing. And when I like follow people online talking about this, they make that point that you just made. That's like the rule number one, you know. That's the whole thing. It was our dumbass response to this, you know. That was it.
And was it dumb, or was this carefully constructed to wage the class struggle, right? Like that's another thing too, right? Like,
I'm interested
is this connected to the class struggle?
I'm interested to hear what you guys think about this, because you know I was thinking about this. And do you think because what was that project 201?
Yeah, event 201. Yeah,
event 201. Yeah, because I was reading about that. That was a trip. It seemed like either this whole thing was manufactured, or they just jumped on it. They had the game plan ready to go. It was like an option pass. They're like, all right, if the outer linebacker comes out, we're tossing the ball, and they just toss the ball like in
the Army Navy game.
Yeah,
it's just read option,
triple option.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
there you go. I'll pitch it. I might keep it. I might not.
They're crashing. We got to pull it out. And
but it's crazy. It's crazy how
Spencer's a football guy. Would you play a little defensive end or what?
Play offensive lines.
Oh, okay.
Wait, outside, inside.
I may or may not have racially profiled that. I'm just saying. May or may not have. But
you heard it here.
This is a good time to actually introduce you, because as a bad podcast, I haven't introduced you yet.
How far?
It's been talking. Everybody's like listening to the newest Rare Candy a week from now, and is saying, "Who is this guy talking?" So this is Spencer Latu. What do you have going on? I feel like I just found you on Twitter. I was just like, oh, this guy's awesome. Like what like how did I find you? Like I don't get it. Like who is this guy?
I'm just a Twitter guy. I went online to try to find like-minded people, found out a lot more about how dire the situation was. I was initially went in being like, oh, I wonder if I can get some more people to vote for Bernie. And then I realized, oh man, there's a lot more to this whole political thing than Bernie Sanders. And
I love it.
I graduated university, just trying to get a decent professional career in this world. Unfortunately, it looks like, as we're, I guess you guys also kind of foreshadowed to the Great Reset. And that's, I think, where I kind of really took my research, was to looking into this whole Great Reset, Fourth Industrial Revolution. Those are like those are the ruling class like branding exercises for it, to make it sound like less terrible than it is. Kind of like they made like colonization sound like, oh, we're just going across the ocean, like no big deal, nothing crazy is going to happen over there. And now we have the world we have today. So that was kind of where, because I had one perspective of the world. Cory Morningstar really opened my eyes to like the levels in which corporations infect even the left, which I thought was pretty crazy.
Which stories were the first ones from?
Oh, Greta, the Greta thing. Yeah, that blew my mind.
What's that?
I actually had a background in environmental NGO stuff because
Thunberg,
I was.
Right?
Greta Thunberg, at my university, I was very sympathetic to the environmental movement, very, very sympathetic to like the social justice people at the school. But I came in kind of with my own like socialist politics. I didn't really understand history maybe as deeply as I should have at the time. I didn't really understand how there was a 350 club on campus, and 350 is created by the Rockefeller Foundation. So
is that half of the 700 club, like Pat Robertson?
Who's that guy? Bill?
350 parts per million or something.
Who's the guy? Bill. Who's the guy?
Bill McKibben.
Yeah.
Don't like. He wants to green the Pentagon. So good luck to you, Bill. So that's when I realized, there's something not right with all this stuff. And then Cory Morningstar really showed me the way to why everything is all screwed up, because there's billionaire NGOs posing as radical socialists. That kind of blew my mind, and I was like, whoa, there's a lot more going on here. And then once I figured, and then as 2020 unfolded, that kind of also opened my eyes to what was going on with like why the changes are happening and what they entail. So if we want to discuss some of that stuff, I can absolutely.
We will. Yeah, we will. I just wanted to introduce you. I was like, we're just talking to this guy. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, the people
just
are like
a researcher. Just like everyone else,
okay,
trying to figure out what is going on.
So before we get to that,
I already love this whole thing.
This is great. I feel like you're like a part of the pod. I feel like you're just like here.
This place is great.
This place is great. Yeah, I agree. So would it be fair to call you a Marxist?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so you're Marxist.
Yeah.
What do you think of people who are taking Marxism and they'll put it in their Twitter bio? I'm Marxist, actual this, actual that.
Marxist dash whatever, yes.
Yeah, Marxist, Bidenist, you know, anything like that. People, I thought that was ironic for a while. There's a couple of people I think that are actually Marxist Bidenists, by the way. And
Communist Party USA.
Yeah, exactly. What is it like seeing somebody, because I would say that I like a lot of things that Karl Marx say, but I don't know if I could say like I'm a Marxist, right? I don't know if I could say that. But as somebody who is like an ardent Marxist, when you see people who are just basically like, when let's say COVID hits, is like stay inside and don't question anything, basically, where's your mind going as far as, do I even believe what I believe anymore? Or were you still able to just be like, no, I'm a Marxist and I'm going to do this right? Because Marx warned us of a lot of things. Marx and Lenin were like, you will be divided into subgroups. You will be divided amongst the working class into subgroups, marginalized groups, this, that. This is Warren. This is in State and Revolution from Lenin too. The same thing.
Exactly.
Is saying you will be divided in a crabs in a bucket kind of way, saying to claw your way out of this insurmountable thing against us, when really you're going to be basically racing to be the best people to obey us, right? Like, like what is there, like, where are you at
visionaries? So, okay, a lot of things there. Number one and number two, sorry, a few things actually. There's a lot going on here. So I would say for the whole Marxist thing is that, like, I guess this is more of like a psychosocial issue here, but there's a lot of very like infantilized people that don't really have strong boundaries of their identity. So if they see someone that like is part of their identity subculture, and they do something different, they feel like personally attacked. And I think that's where a lot of Twitter discourse comes from. It's like, oh, you can't be me because you're saying this, but it's like, well, why don't you just worry about what you're thinking and less about like the labels, and then just see like where the evidence leads us. Like, you know, if my theory is that, you know, this whole COVID thing is not really the killer plague and they're actually trying to enslave us with this as like the reason, then we'll let it play out and see what happens. I mean, if there's like millions of people dropping dead from this thing, then obviously the people who said stay in their homes were totally right and I was an absolute idiot. However, you know, where's the evidence led us? And number two is that speaking on the screen issue, a lot of people view Marx and Lenin through like, it's like a movie that you're viewing, and they're talking, when in reality it's, what they're talking about is their world at that exact moment. When Lenin was writing Imperialism, the high stage of revolution, the high stage of capitalism, that was at that exact moment where there was cartels duking it out, and, you know, the world was being, you know, he was totally right. He called World War I coming a mile away, where he's like, yeah, they're going to break it all up. They're going to divide the world up again because there's not enough to go around, and they need to chop it up because that's how the system works. So Lenin, like, amazing, totally he called 2 world wars before they even happened. So I mean, like, you know, because he applied, you know, the Marxist thinking to the situation that they're in. And that's what we're not doing today. We're not applying Marxism to our current situation. We're pretending that the world is the same as what Lenin was writing about, when the world has completely changed. It's been over a century. So to think it's even the same is like so absurd. Like, obviously certain parts of capitalism stay the same, such as like the tendency for the rate of profit to decline, which is why, you know, the world is getting all screwier and screwier when it comes to like we hit the point where it's, you know, economic crises right before COVID, which was like what Marx kind of talked about, was like there would be kind of like a point where we can't continue as capitalism.
Right.
Well, now
that's where we're at now, where this is not like what it was like in that time anymore. People aren't getting like,
it's totally different.
It's different because you're not like, the reason why I'm trying to like, okay, I guess the hardest thing for me to say about this is that like explaining why it's different. So I get caught up in explaining why the world is 100 years ago is totally different, but it's because now it's like we have absolutely completely different like relations amongst countries too. That's another thing, is that the whole like Soviet Union being overthrown and China going capitalist, like for whatever reason, that doesn't really enter people's ideas of like how that would possibly change how world politics are conducted. But if you think about it from a class struggle perspective, you know, one revolution, the Russian Revolution, huge advancement for humanity, put back down. The Chinese Revolution, amazing, huge gains being made for like so many people across the world. I mean, it ignited like revolutionaries in America, like the Black Panthers. That has been turned back. So where are we at now, right? Where's the last revolutionary places on earth? Like,
and that's the only question that matters.
They're running parallel to neoliberalism is what they're doing. That's all it is. It's a parallel. But like, I've always thought like contemporary Marxists, and it's like, I try to tell myself is like, look, like, I like Marx. I should not. It's the same way like Gandhi was saying, like, I like Christ, but not the Christians. But I'm like, the same way, like, is like, I like Marx, but these Marxists right now are literally running this like subculture to neoliberalism, where it's basically like the rapper that hasn't put out a mainstream album yet, where it's
coming, trust the plan.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm that's what I just can't. I have to stop myself from saying, oh, I don't like the Marx stuff because of what the Marxoids are doing.
Yeah.
You know what I
mean?
Well,
I think Marx had a really famous quote about how he didn't call himself a Marxist. So I think this is a problem for a really long time.
He knew. Yeah. He knew
this was going to get
like, what have I done? Yeah. The beaker, like where he's in the science lab and the beaker breaks and like the monster, he's like, oh my God, what did I do? Yeah.
This is the beautiful thing about Marx too, is that he never really there was no invention. It was just application of thought. And like, that's the most beautiful thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel anymore, people. Like, you just have to apply this to our current situation. And I think when it comes to like the Marxist situation, it's kind of seeing it as like how a class would go about conducting the class struggle. And I think that's where we're losing people, because they're not seeing the fact that, this digital stuff, like digital everything, is not really helping, the workers. I think there's a beautiful part of Capital when Marx is discussing, how like the productive forces of England at his time, could they could have a socialist society, a communist society, but what do we have today, right? Like, obviously over 100 years now of advancement. So of course there's more than enough technological capacity, but then it begs the question, like, okay, then what is this tech for? And I think that's kind of where Marxists and I divide. Not that I'm anti-Marxist. In fact, like, I would love to bring as many Marxists along, because I think that's what we need, as many people who are not bogged down with the idealistic stuff. Like, we don't need people talking about how, oh, we just need a freer market or something stupid like that. It's like, we need like an actual like army to stop this stuff, because like, I don't know how much more history of people, like masses of humanity dying, that we need to see, but like, that's like not that's like a very real threat. So the fact that it's like people are more concerned with like following the rules or something, as opposed to like protecting ourselves, I think at this point is kind of like, I think where I diverge, because you got to take a look at the evidence, because the evidence is like, these plans for this technotronic world of having everything digitally controlled, like that's the ultimate like prison for humanity. That's like the plan, basically. It is to more or less like control us through these technologies, through the behavioral psychology stuff, like the nudging of people to act a certain way, even these like psychological operations like COVID and stuff, where it's changing, it's social engineering to get people to act a different way. And like, you need to I guess where I feel like sometimes I don't get across to them is that seeing that these once like great revolutionary countries like China, it's what are they doing now, right? Like, why are they in this high-tech economy with in bed with Israel on it? Like, what is what's happening here? What's Russia doing with its high-tech economy? It's not the USSR anymore. Vladimir Putin is not Stalin. It's the historical parallels are like something from like like comic book characters.
Yeah,
they're not like real people based on like their actual policies and what they're doing. I mean, obviously I'm not privy to behind closed doors. I'm just going off what people are seeing on the internet, like everyone else. But even there, you can see the groups collaborating. I mean, when it comes to the case of China, Russia, United States, it appears like, oh my God, these people are on the brink of World War III. And then, you look into the technologies they're all employing, and it's the same technologies on the people. And I know that, I guess, and this seems to be an issue too in Marxist circles, the whole vaccine passport looming issue. Like, why is this technology that would, basically have internal border systems being rolled out simultaneously in like multiple areas? What's the point of all that? Like, is it to make a profit? It doesn't seem very profitable. to do all this stuff. But it seems like it would be very useful for, I don't know, like identifying people, you know, very easily who are like not going along with whatever is, you know, inside the vaccine. People like right there, you know, you can just like stop those people right then and there. So it's like, that to me is, I think, like the key issue of today is like seeing it through class struggle as opposed to these kind of like you're saying, like parallel to neoliberalism. Like this isn't like a game to these people where they're trying to like outmaneuver the United States at like making more money than like China's not trying to like game the United States to have like a better 5G market with their like telecoms. It's very much so like, and I mean, if people would take the time to kind of read about, I mean, like what these like more I don't know how to describe them, like this more spooky organizations like Atlantic Council or like, you know, the Rhodes Council, or these people, you know, they're kind of hinting at a world divided into major sections.
Yes.
And like that's like, you know, kind of building off what you said about Lenin, like that's like how they're dividing humanity. It's like conquer, divide and conquer, but like based on like huge regions. And then already you can see how regions are being totally transformed, where like America manufacturing completely offshored. You know, same thing with Canada. So like, what does that make us here, right? Like, what are we gonna, you know, what's the economy over here, right? Like, is there a reason why they're kind of like turning back the clock on the economy? Is there a reason why they've kind of like, you know, what's the reasons? The reason obviously is because it's like, it's more effective for the class struggle to take these jobs, put them in a more tightly controlled, like, and especially in like Southeast Asia. Like, I mean, Vietnam is now a huge manufacturing center. And also, lo and behold, a place where the United States completely ravaged it with chemical weapons. You know, Yugoslavia totally destroyed with depleted uranium. That's a lot of food there that is not going to be ever grown again. You know, Iraq, same thing. Mesopotamia, places to grow food, right? So it's just, I guess, like it's I guess maybe this is like a lot of history. So maybe if people aren't so well versed in history, it's like hard to see all these connections of like, oh man, it looks like they're kind of making the world like an unlivable place for large groups of people.
Yeah.
And instead it makes it a lot friendlier for some kind of like weird billionaire dystopia.
Yes.
Instead. So I don't know. And like, especially with the whole like, you know, like colonizing planets discourse, it's like, you know, maybe they're just colonizing us here right now.
Yeah.
And like, this is like kind of how we're being drawn up. Sorry, that was a long tangent there.
Boom. That's why we have you.
No, I mean, we brought you here to say it. Yeah, no, that's good. You had just so for the episode's sake, I wanted to move towards just real fast. I noticed something in Canada. What I'm seeing, I don't know what province this is in or where it's at, but the I'm noticing children can just go get like vaccines.
Oh my God. Yeah.
They can just walk up and just be like, one vax, please. And then just, they're like, which one? Don't care. Give me one.
What's the
please.
limit? What's the,
So this is just kind of a take I have on it, which really bothers me is, and again, I'll speak for myself here because this might be a little controversial, but what I find funny about that is how a child, let's say the child is age 12, right? Yeah. A very formative part of their age, right? About to enter puberty or anything. So by the leftoid, and I won't say it's all left people, but a lot of leftoids are like, they should have access to puberty blockers that could stop puberty from occurring, right? They should be able to get a vaccine, right? Get something that could alter their DNA, technically, something that could happen like this. But then if they're like 20 years old, they can't date a 29-year-old because that's an age gap.
So,
you know what no, like it's such a weird thing. They make you an adult at age 12 and you're a child at age 20 when you're in college or something like that.
You're infantilized as an adult, but as an adult, as a child, you're an adult. Yes,
it's insane.
Exactly.
People don't see that. People in America, and I'm sure in Canada is the same way, vaccines aren't viewed as that big of a deal, right? Like a lot of people, even the people that are like, you get the ardent like pro vaccine people are like, we need to get the vaccines, but a lot of people are just like, I'll just get it, I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't care. Like, it's whatever. If I can just go back to my life, that's fine. But it's a big deal for like someone who's 12 years old that could be like, yeah, I'm gonna go get it. You know, I'm just gonna go get it. Now I'm picturing myself as a 12-year-old. I'm like, yeah, let me get a needle. You know, like I don't think I'd ever do that. But what do you know about
get a
that?
tattoo as a 12-year-old. Yeah, right. Might as well.
Why not?
In the army.
Literally, why not? Why can't you go get a tattoo? Why can't? Hello. Okay, I guess I'm speaking for everybody then. I was just gonna speak for myself because it was all right. It's the same way.
Okay, so there's a lot going on there because I think there's like you brought up the
puberty
trans
blockers.
issue, the puberty blockers, and here's the thing is that I think that's a great example of fake leftery right there, because I don't think it's like ever been a huge LGBTQ issue to really like push this kind of stuff like as the way that they are. And then once you look into the this is another great reset, fourth industrial revolution kind of thing, like transhumanism and kind of like that whole idea, like then it starts to kind of make a little bit more sense where, you know, there's like an ideological bend to, you know, viewing the human body as like a problem that needs to be solved through technology and all these types of pharmaceuticals and such.
Yes.
So I'm not like, and that's the issue though, is that people will conflate that and put that on transsexual people. And like, that's obviously not the case for transsexual people. They don't want this for everybody. It's the billionaires using this avenue to push the issue. And like a lot of people just can't seem to differentiate the two. And like, that's why I try not to like, you know, force the issue, because it's not fair. Like there's people like the billionaires are very, very good at placing people who actually have fought for this, like the LGBTQ, like, you know, revolutionary movement. They put them in front of it and make them take the heat, make everyone hate them. But really, they're just trying to push their transhumanist agenda onto 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. And then also on top of that, there's the whole like Greta thing, which, you know, is like a very like just a whole other can of worms. But that whole idea where it's like children should lead the world kind of stuff, which is like sweet. And like, I appreciate it because like children, you know, are important, and children are treated terribly by people like Jeffrey Epstein. And, you know, like,
he wasn't great. He wasn't great with them from what I've read.
Or what Bill Gates was doing with Jeffrey Epstein. No one seems to care about that anymore, but
no,
you know, whatever about kids and billionaires, we're not going to care about that. But that's why it's like, you know, it's like you got it, where it's like they're trying to make it so that kids can consent to these things. Because I don't know exactly about what's going on with the whole vaccine. I'm not a scientist. I don't really know what the ingredients are or what it would do to people. However, like you mentioned, they're stuck with this for life. So how you can make a life-altering decision at 12, like you can't get a tattoo though, because that could like make you look ugly or whatever. But Bell's palsy, I guess, is fine if you give it to a 12-year-old. But whatever. Anyways, and like just the way I see this, especially in Canada, there was in Toronto, there was a vaccine pop-up clinic with free ice cream and a DJ for 12-year-old children to like 18-year-old children for kids. And there's a line of cops surrounding them. So I don't know, like in the left world, it's like cops anywhere, evil. Like they're the worst. And like I agree, because I think cops are just a bunch of bootlickers who follow. I mean, they followed the COVID rules, so look at them. That's how much useful they are. That thin blue line. They're really going to help us. You know, these cops eventually they're going to break free. Because they're just a bunch of rule followers themselves. But then in the left world, you know, no one thinks twice about this like heavily guarded vaccine clinic with a bunch of police around it. Like, wouldn't that automatically set off a million alarm bells of like, this is sketchy, guys? Like, why are the cops protecting this vaccine clinic? And then once again, you know, believing the caricatures and like pretending it's like a screen world. There's this like evil anti-vax lobby that's like going to attack these children or something. And I think as long as you believe in those ghosts, like you'll believe the most crazy tales about like why the police are there. The police are there obviously because they're, you know, they know that this stuff is like extremely gross and offensive to the population. And like, you know, I mean, the right-wing media reported on it and, you know, showed people yelling at it and stuff. But I guess like, you know, there you go. It only reinforces in left people's mind, oh, it's in the right-wing media, so it's like evil, even though it's like, well, what's this objective situation that we're dealing with here? And it's pretty weird and troubling, because when do you have like cops lining up around like doctors' offices for flu shots or something? Like, it's not normal.
Not great.
And also a vaccine delivered by the military, so that doesn't seem to
doesn't seem great. No. I'm picturing something really funny. I'm sorry, but like it's funny, but in a fucked up way. But like at the vaccine pop-up clinic with the DJ, like it's just like, you know, 5 minutes. They keep you in the holding tank. I mean, I haven't gotten it, but I guess they keep you in like a holding tank, you know, for observation right after. But it's like, can you imagine if like the dubstep drop hits like right as you get Bell's palsy, like just wow, and you're just like, oh no, I don't feel so good. Like, but
that's like. I think they would actually be playing the Spotify vaccinated playlist
Oh,
is that a thing? Yes.
Look it up on Spotify. The
Oh my
vaccinated
God.
songs. They got like "Here Comes the Sun" and "Hit Me with Your Best Shot."
not George. George
George
Harrison cannot be
Okay.
on that. No, okay, all right. That's
Now it's personal, dude. Yeah.
That's like my favorite guitarist.
And in Vancouver,
Like,
they gave a dozen or so teens the wrong vaccine. Pfizer is the only one approved for kids, and they gave them Moderna instead. So,
yeah.
I mean,
Nice.
whatever. They're just kids, right?
That's
They're
actually
the new experiment, so this is great.
That's super that's super fascinating. The language of this, because I know that the language of this stuff is important, you know, as we'd all agree. And the whole thing is always, did you get the vaccine? You know, it's always the, and there's like, which one? There's fucking like 6, you know, like, and they're all different efficacies.
So like one of them,
and it's and it's this weird rhetorical trick that kind of, I don't know if it's intentional or if everyone just adopted it or whatever, but I think that's super interesting.
It is interesting.
And very interesting. Very interesting.
I wanted to ask you about, because we talked about the Marx thing, but then before that you had mentioned, you had jumped in talking about him early on, which, and it hit me because this is something that I had been thinking about for a while. Like, how far did he go in, because you were alluding to that he predicted this stuff pretty dramatically, and I agree. But like, how far did he go? Like, because you were talking about the tech stuff and how the tech thing is kind of a hurdle, or a mental hurdle for us. We got to be able to understand that things are different today. Like, how far do you think he went versus where he didn't go in terms of today's
with
stuff?
capital, like, I mean, they talked about machinery as like actually costing more for humanity, and, you know, leading to worse out, you know,
like automation.
Yeah. Well, not just automation, but also the machines in the factories, because you know, for a long time, people are like, oh, well, the machines make things better for the workers because it's easier, but really machines are expensive. The capitalists only make so much money. So, you know, the more the machine costs, the less the worker gets,
right?
You know, pretty simply, right? So it's like, you know, now we see that, like, fast forward 150 plus years, and you're like, well, these machines are real expensive and we got a lot of people here. So something's got to give. And, you know, I don't think a lot of people see it like that, where they still, unfortunately, as people who would claim Marx but never really reading it that closely or paying attention to what the hell he was trying to get at here, where it'll be like, yeah, this is, the machines are actually helping us, and that automation is good, and drones delivering you stuff is not gonna, like, I don't know, lead to, you know, more problems down the road. And second, of how far along did he see the politics of this stuff? Well, if you read his response, like the crushing of the Paris Commune, he like discusses like the you know, the financiers' conspiracy to crush this like socialist movement. And it's like, well, I mean, how many more financier conspiracies have we seen in the years since the Paris Commune in, like, you know, 19th century, right? So it's like, you know, this is one of those things where it's like, I think it's like pattern recognition more than it's like prophesized. Like, you know, these thinkers, Marx, Lenin, like, you know, they saw what was going on. They, you know, wrote really succinctly, like, hey, like, this is the facts, look at the pattern, you know, see this is gonna, that's how we know what's going to happen based on like these like laws of motion of the economy, right? It's like, I don't know, it's, to me, it's like, if you can't see the same thing playing out over and over and over again, like, you know, like that, like if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it kind of stuff. Like, that's all we're seeing over and over and over again. And people really ought to read these thinkers and understand how power is you know, consolidated, and like what he was talking about, what he means by like a class struggle, because I think that would clarify a lot of things for people. Because if you think about it, maybe if you've read Lenin very literally and thought it was about like nations at this point, you kind of like, that's not really the case, because, you know, in the world we have today, we have global supply chains where, you know, goods aren't like, you know, where there's like this American cartel with all these like American companies. It's not really like that. Like, Walmart's in China. So it's not really like a national cartel fighting another national cartel. These are like international, well, I mean, the term for them is multinational companies, right? Like, these are multinational cartels. So the people who own them, that are, you know, often married into the same families. Like, we're not talking about like different, like, competing interests. Like, these are all the same people doing the same things, just in like their region of the world, as opposed to like, and I don't know, I think it's like, a lot of people think just because it's like a lot of people doing business all at one time, that like they can't, I don't know, they couldn't all decide that, hey, you know what, maybe these like UN sustainable development goals, that we all signed on to. Like maybe if we ran the world like this, it would be a lot better for us because we'd have like a completely controlled workforce that's like, God knows what they do to us pharmaceutically. Our, environment is like toxic. Like it's not that the walls are closing in. It's just like, the world is, like the last revolution they're going to overthrow right here is like the French Revolution of, basic like civil liberties, right? Like even that's going to be taken away soon. So
easily.
Well, it's kind of already happened under COVID, I guess 9/11 too, where like, habeas corpus, like we don't need that anymore. But now it's like, it's getting even worse under COVID and whatever else comes next, because it's a struggle, right? I love the football metaphor. I really gravitated to that. I really appreciate that.
That's all I have. I have nothing. I have nothing else to, like, seriously. Like if you could put anything to a football metaphor, it's in. You know what I mean? It works for me. Maybe not most of the left. Left doesn't really like sports a whole lot for the most part.
Especially get John Gruden in there.
That's me. Yeah. But I think Army's gonna keep the ball here, and I think event 201 here faked out the defensive end, the crashing end.
John Hopkins offensive line.
That's the beautiful thing of it all. It's these people, like, as we react to things real time on social media, like there's algorithms that like deal with all this stuff and like can like sort through it and kind of like get where people are at. So it's like you see the simple like ball fake play action pass of it was Bojo saying, "Oh, we're scrapping our vaccination passport plans," and then of course everyone's like, "Oh, they're scrapping the vaccine passport, everyone, hurrah!" But it's like he said, he's scrapping the plans. So that means that they can easily come back with any other new plan they have.
You didn't beat anybody. You didn't beat anybody.
Like the left, I would say, if anything, is following the ball. You gotta watch the offensive line. They're not gonna lie to you. You know, whatever that is, you gotta follow that. You gotta follow. Not only follow the money, but like if like, and here's a great example for vaccine passports. Common Pass, like the Rockefeller Foundation has like their own version of this stuff, and like of course the Rockefeller dynasty has been dominating America for over like a century now. So to think that's like they're just like bit players and they could just be a few people that are like kind of sad about it online can like make them be like, "Oh guys, well, we had this awesome plan, we're just gonna like give it up now." It's like, no, this is a protracted struggle. Like this is going to keep going and going and going until people are subdued, and the class war is won for them. And like what kind of vision do they have for us? Well, if you look into the fourth industrial revolution stuff, it's all there. They talk about smart cities, they talk about all digital payments, they talk about like the vaccine passports, having your health passport determining where you can go, and as well as like internal borders, right? But that's why people need to give up on civil liberties, because the whole idea of having an internal border, you got to prove your health pass before you go to the grocery store. That kind of violates all the basics of that. Right. So all that's got to go. And and with the whole smart city, fourth industrial revolution stuff, a smart city, what is that? It's and this is another thing too, like all the memes really screwed people's brains up. 5G, haha. It's not like a joke, like why would you need this super powerful telecom stuff?
It does nothing. It does nothing for working people. I keep telling people 5G does nothing for you. Like
why billions of dollars on it? Because there's a lot to gain from having, I don't know, real-time data collection in every corner where you stick one of those towers at. Like, that's so useful for us. But I mean, if you're using the leftoid version of it, it's like they're gonna make so much more money getting more people streaming more stuff. But it's like that doesn't make it, like Netflix doesn't, like it doesn't make any money that way. Yeah, you already can. So like what's the point of spending more money on it? There's no point other than if you're going to use this to, I don't know, like spy on people more effectively,
automate more things.
Have Internet of Things and Internet of Bodies technologies where all these smart devices communicate with each other, can figure out your position based on like the connections between the two, between all the devices. And then of course the Internet of Bodies, which includes like the implantable stuff, like implants and stuff like that for Elon Musk kind of dropped the Elon Musk brain chip, but there's more to it than that. I mean, there's wearable technologies. On the World Economic Forum, they showed the digital passport shirt. So don't worry about having a phone or anything. Just in your shirt, we'll be able to figure out if Yeah, what system you belong to.
Yeah.
They have a Kickstarter. The
Yeah,
WEF. They're like, help us. We got this shirt plan. Yeah.
Next stop, the moon, guys. We're taking this to the moon.
Oh yeah, we're totally going to the moon, guys. Definitely not stringing you along with that stupid story about like space colonization that was seeded into your mind in like Star Wars and Star Trek. That definitely wasn't trying to like distract you all. Like they're definitely not waging a class struggle like those silly Marxist people were saying.
Yeah.
Don't listen to them. Listen to the science behind instead.
Like the rhetoric around the whole meme thing, like making, or the microchip, being like, oh, microchip, it's so dumb, but then you see the articles come out where they're like, oh wait, is this one of those things where they're actually working on? And it's just like, boom, like you just fell into the trap, you literally, you were given a chance to investigate something, and you turned it into like a snide remark, and it's like, man, like, there's some crazy shit going down, and we should, I don't know, it's just,
and it's not bad. It's not crazy to think that maybe the global elites have figured out how to meme. You know what I mean? Like that's not a crazy like conclusion to come to. And also, just real fast, just for the sake of time, let just get into the Great Reset a little bit. We haven't really talked about it much. Now, my understanding of a lot of it is it's actually I've actually been reading. A lot of people like to read when they're conspiracy theorists, right, or people who go against the grain as far as what they're told. I actually kind of like to read like what they're saying first, like the actual World Economic Forum. I like to actually see how they're marketing.
Oh yeah, it's super fascinating.
First. I always think that's better, and they're doing a fucking fantastic job, by the way. Like where I was reading it, they said it was like an alternative form of capitalism that incorporates Marxism, which this rocks, by the way, to say that. Like, yeah, this is actually on like World Economic Forum like publications, and
they already targeted that's crazy.
So like the guy behind me right now, if you're watching on YouTube, like they're guys who, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Like that's fine. But what I found one site, and I'll put it up on the screen here. This is it's basically, so the World Economic Forum says, and this is from the Oxford Blue. This isn't really like a counterculture newspaper as far as I'm thing. This is actually like kind of going along with what they're saying. They're saying capitalism as we know it is dead, the WEF, World Economic Forum says, and thus stakeholder capitalism is needed. In this case, rather than pursuing profits, companies would pursue the well-being of all people and the entire planet. Essentially, stakeholder capitalism would be capitalism with a dose of Marxism. Just sprinkle it in like parsley and herb, something like that. And which would the WEF believes is needed for capitalism to survive. This would serve to eliminate the disparities seen during the COVID-19 crisis, during which billionaires have increased their wealth by over 25%, blah, blah, blah. Jeff Bezos has grown, all that stuff. So they're using this Great Reset, right? This is the World Economic Forum headed by Klaus Schwab. And Klaus Schwab is very interesting to me because somebody who's describing an alternative to capitalism, but it's still capitalism. So he's kind of dipping his toe in both sides. And then if you look at Klaus Schwab, right, who, that name sounds very German, you'd be correct. And you're like, how German, right? I can't say all Germans are Nazis. Let's look up Gunther Schwab, his father. So that's a great Wikipedia page, by the way. So his early life, right? His early life.
Hang on.
Yeah, no, it's great. So after the First World War, his family, the Schwab family, was merchants. They moved to Vienna, Austria, where Schwab discovered his love for nature, which great guy already. And in Vienna,
I love the natural order of things where the Aryans are on top. Love nature.
Yes, yeah, he's like, actually, nature rocks. The way
nature guy.
Yeah, I actually love it. So in Vienna, he joined the NSDAP, otherwise known as the Nazi Party. And he was with the brown shirts. And I like this part right here where it says, as an editor of Lebensschutz, Protection of Life, which is a great publication, it sounds like. And he is
protecting life. What do you have against protecting life?
Yeah, how could you be against that? But he was repeatedly accused of racism. Like, I like how there was some SJW back in like 1930 that was like, hey, that's racist.
Hey, this stuff about calling communism a Bolshevik Jew virus, this could be really racist, guys. Like, I don't know about this stuff.
Where I'm going with this point is the World Economic Forum, right? And I'm not saying Marxists are supporting the World Economic Forum, but they are indirectly in an extent. Like a lot of the left, they are doing it indirectly by telling you.
Well, I mean, China's a member, right? So it's like, however many Marxists hitch their wagon to China, then hitch their wagon to the world economy. It's the same plan, right?
If the shoe fits, wear it. Let's just say that much, right? Like if you're supporting this stuff, like then that's fine. But then they will go out and tell you that your garbage man could perhaps be a Nazi. Right, like that he might have stormed the Capitol. He might have done all this kind of stuff. He might have threatened our democracy, which apparently we like now. And and then we're like headed by an actual Nazi descendant, Klaus Schwab. World Economic Forum is taking place. So now I said a lot there, but I really want to know, like, what the hell is the Great Reset?
That's great. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much for all that background, because you covered all the stuff I would have had to say. So
sorry, I was sitting on that for a while.
I need to send more people Klaus Schwab's father. That's great.
Yeah,
so the Great
Charles
Reset,
Schwab might actually be better.
I was just thinking that the whole time. Like, how's this
progressive car insurance rather than actual progressives? The Great Reset. So this is their branding of the class struggle, right? Of this, like, this catalyst. And Klaus Schwab has a great book on this called COVID-19, The Great Reset. And it was really eye-opening, because in it, he talks about how COVID-19 is not that big of a deal. Like, literally, I'm like, whoa,
I wrote it.
Yeah, it was like the guy who's like, leading the COVID response in the world, right? Because like World Economic Forum is partnered with the UN, and the UN is partnered with the World Health Organization. You know what I mean? So it's all kind of very like tightly controlled. So I was like, that's a weird messaging that you're getting in here. But I guess like they just assume that nobody is going to read their books except for like other like powerful people. So they're just there, and when like the media won't report on it because they're pretty controlled. So. But yeah, so he talks about how it's like not that big of a deal, but the effects of it are going to linger for a very long time, which will usher in this new age of digital. That's what the fourth industrial revolution is talking about, is like the digital aspects of everything. And more, if I were to sum up what the point of all this digital stuff is basically that it can be their version of like a tightly controlled system where like it's not necessarily like they mentioned in there, it's not about like the money per se anymore. It's like this idea of like you can control, and like Bill Gates like talked about this on his Microsoft blog about like their climate dashboard kind of thing, where it's like if we can hook up like everything to this like to just constantly surveil everything, like all the emissions, like all the people being born, everything going on the earth via a dashboard and like an algorithm, which is where the whole digital or agile governance, these are like the buzzword terms, are used, where basically it's like, and like I was talking about earlier in the smart city, where the light posts and like everything in the smart city would be kind of tied up in the Internet of Things technology, which would then be able to track like everyone moving around, like the cars going down the street, or like people walking around, and be able to kind of like know where everything's going on all the time. And with this information, they think that they can like basically run the earth. And there's a double-edged sword to this, because it feeds into petty bourgeois people's Jetsons fantasy that like the elites were benevolent this whole time and they were trying to take us to Mars. And obviously they're not, because Marxists, we got to understand there's a class struggle going on to, control humanity, just like, slavery and feudalism. Here we are again, except with this like now like capitalist feudalism. It's ironic that they bring in Marxism. And I think that's also part of the plan, which is like to use like China as like and Marxism as the evil other that has like tainted capitalism, because the Chinese system, just a quick run through history. So after Mao died, Deng Xiaoping and the capitalist roaders succeeded the Gang of Four. And these people were very, very friendly with like Henry Kissinger, and they subscribed to this like technocratic system. So as you can see in China, it's kind of like a dry run of what the rest of the world would kind of look like, because China already has a social credit system. It already has smart cities being built. It's also Chinese aristocrats pre Japanese colonialism in the 20th century Chinese aristocrats had a strong affinity for Western medicine and like Rockefeller medicine. They had a Rockefeller University open there like well over 100 years ago. So this is not new to like Chinese society. This kind of like Western like influence and this is not new for them to be tied at the hip like they are today, because like that's really what's going down with this whole Great Reset kind of thing, which is that they used COVID-19 to unfortunately put humanity in a really horrible place. People are extremely divided now. Like you mentioned before, crabs in a bucket, vaccinated, non-vaccinated, you know, people defined on national lines, right? You're in evil Russia, evil China, evil America. It depends on where you are, but everyone around, like other people are evil. Very divided. And now it's using that division as well as suppression of our basic civil liberties to roll out these technologies and this new way of acting, like social distancing and such like that, because once like that's the case, like it's not like we're going to go back and you're going to have like a room full of people like without, I guess with people who are like less affected by COVID, but people who've taken it really, really seriously, like they're not psychologically able to do that anymore, right? You've kind of maimed people in a way, right? So it's kind of like playing on that to further the goal. And like, as long as people resist to this, like it's an ongoing struggle. Humanity, as bad as it's been this past year, humanity's still not broken. And people in India the Indian farmers movement's risen up against it. They've, correctly identified Modi as, being a puppet of other capitalist interests, and are, fighting back against him, and like what kind of what kind of policies they're implementing in India. I mean, India already has the biometric IDs, right? That's what they're trying to get for everybody, basically, like your fingerprints or like retina scan and such. And they're fighting back, realizing that like they're tied together. Russian revolutionaries as well, thank goodness the Russians, we could really use them right now to fight back. They're fighting, they understand that Putin is using COVID as like a guise for implementing only further fascistic, laws and such like that. But and that's where it's like kind of sad, because here that's not the case. People do not believe that at all. They just think it's like, oh, things are changing, but it's all because of the bungling. And if only people had did the pandemic right, like China, then it wouldn't end up like this. But I'm like, well, the Chinese system is ultimately what they want to impose here. But I guess because it's like, it's because people are so ahistorical and unfortunately quite also like very like
they're not nuanced.
They're not nuanced. It's not nuanced. They just think it's like, oh, it's in China, so the evil Chinese came up with it. They're trying to affect us with the evil Chinese virus. But it's, obviously without history, which is that, these were like a cooperative thing where, the Chinese like implemented eugenics, like the one-child policy, based on the advice of like Western medicine. So there's like people working together to, impose their power, impose their will upon humanity. And I guess like that idea is really hard for people to get. I think everyone would probably be able to grasp it a little more if they stepped away from social media for a while, away from the hot takes.
I hear you.
Yeah. The Great Reset.
And the Indian farmers revolution, what I find funny about that is the news stopped reporting on that the second it became not useful for the COVID narrative. And once they started protesting that, then they're like, they dropped that like a hot potato, that was,
you don't get
right? Before they were using it as like a little tool, but it was just a perfect, something we all know happens, but just in real time, it's fascinating to see.
That's true. And so I guess my last question for you would be, okay, so let's take the narrative that maybe, I guess I would have scoffed at by Alex Jones a long time ago, right? The globalist narrative, right? Like the just it's globalist, one world government, new world order, that kind of stuff. How far off is that right now?
So Alex Jones is like the perfect like CIA agent, like shit coder of everything, because like he has his whole like family connections to all that and such. So it's like you can see how this guy is like given a script to kind of like make these things look absurd. So it's like he's close, but like so far off. Like it's like a broken clock right twice a day kind of situation with Alex Jones. But as far as the one world government kind of stuff, like they're kind of like especially with the COVID stuff, that's like very present because it's like everyone's COVID stuff gets uploaded to Kovacs. So that's the Bill Gates like UN global like COVID database to like control the COVID pandemic, right? So like that's kind of like a very early, like it's not a government, obviously, it's just it's just an institution to kind of deal with the COVID stuff.
Right.
Those are the building blocks of this stuff, because you're going to need a system with like everyone's identity on it, everyone's like, I mean, with it, you have their biometric data, you have their DNA, like you have so much with that to begin with. And that's like a building block right there for like I mentioned earlier, MasterCard's trust stamp. All they need is your biometrics, and they can have like a totally workable credit system where they can like give you loans just based on your biometrics, right? So like, I mean, it's happening, but it's not like, I don't know, it's not like Alex Jones said it.
Right.
Like, and I think that's the point, right? Is that they kind of seed you one version of it, very apocalyptic, very weird, very like unbelievable.
Narrative driven, very narrative driven too. Almost.
Like, I mean, a very rising action kind of like, you know, it's just weird, right? That's the way I describe it. It's like, it just sounds like something that wouldn't happen in actual, like if you knew anything about history. So I would say to Alex Jones, not very real, but global governance, very real, because global governance is, and from global governance, it gets even worse, because then they'll become agile, which then means it's run by AI. So that's like ultimately what they're kind of looking for, is like powerful people would much rather have us being dictated what to do by an algorithm that's like, oh, too many people are I don't know, doing whatever activity is causing too many emissions or whatever, you know, ridiculous kind of demand, and then hey, we can boss them around. But like, and that's another thing too about the other side of the coin is that it's this system of like technocratic stuff is like really like Jetson like, because a lot of it, just from my own personal experience with like these kind of like future is now companies, is like, it's not, their tech isn't very good too. So how much of this stuff is going to work? Like, I don't think much of it, to be completely honest with you. So because it's like, it's based on their ability to use our tax dollars, our money to fund this stuff, waste our, you know, futures building all this pointless crap that is not good for anyone but like their own personal interests. And, you know, however many humans are totally destroyed along the way is obviously of no consequence, because like they've mentioned before, overpopulation is a huge problem to population council members, Jane Goodall and what's the Sir David Attenborough, like the spokespeople of the environmental crap. So it's a narrative that's definitely like the futuristic stuff is meant for the petty bourgeois, people who think that they'll have their own little, they'll get their own little apartment pod that they can live in and stream and, I don't know, have like virtual reality sex. I don't know what they want from this
Eat
stuff.
out of the trough that's the DoorDash guy just pours slop into.
The bugs, you can eat your bugs.
Cicadas. The cicadas are back. Yeah. But
delicious and nutritious. But in reality, the billions of people aren't going to survive this stuff. Like the Great Reset is like the it's the beginning of a very long tragic arc for humanity, because it's just how you can claim to be saving lives whilst like killing millions of people due to like depriving them basic necessities like healthcare. People are shut out from hospitals because COVID, or, you know, they're telling farmers not to produce food. We're going to pay you not to produce food, or, you know, and also all the places destroyed by war. So it's hard to believe that this is like saving lives, because I think what we're going to see is a lot of people, you know, being depopulated, sadly, and it honestly breaks my heart, and why I'm trying to get the word out now about kind of like this, like that there is some method to this madness that we see around us. It seems like chaos. It seems like people like are just bungling their way through, but unfortunately this is what has been wanted for us for a long time, and has sadly been alluded to very dodgy characters by Alex Jones, but it's unfortunately a real phenomenon.
And what about I guess the one thing I was that freaked me out was when I saw the Colonial Pipeline in the United States, right? The software was hacked, and all distribution of that gas was basically halted because it had all been automated, and the truckers had been let go because you didn't need truckers anymore if this pipeline was working. And the World Economic Forum had warned of cyber pandemics,
Yeah.
And I mean, is that a coincidence? I guess, like, because I freaked out about
absolutely
it in a
not.
couple episodes.
No. That's 100%.
Yeah,
100%.
like that felt like a test. Like, to me, this whole thing, like, if I'm gonna really put on my tinfoil hat, this felt like a test. COVID felt like a test, right? Because it's a virus that really does not kill a lot of people.
It did what it was meant to do. Like, that's the thing. There's not like it's you can see it, like they go crazy with it right at the beginning, like full on propaganda blitz. Then as it wears off on, like, sensible people, it's, a lot more sensible things are being said. Like, it becomes less like hyperbolic. With the hacking of it, I mean, the story is absolutely absurd that, like, these, like, random group of people just, like, held this whole pipeline hostage for, like,
Chiefs
days.
fans, they were Chiefs fans, and Chiefs fans don't know how to use computers. That's what that's my thing, dude. Like they don't have access to them, and they don't know how to use computers. I mean, like, what? How can you got to blame it on a way more competent fan base, in my opinion, as a football fan.
Fans. Yeah, they're mad about the Super Bowl.
I know.
People
get over
this stuff, man, and it's like, I totally agree with you. It's like, I mean, it's a test insofar as, like, it's like, seeding it in our minds, like, allowing us to, like, meditate on it for a little bit and think, like, oh yeah, this could totally happen again, couldn't it? Then next thing you know, the thing, like you said, does happen. And the warning of the cyber pandemic, that's another thing. That's like Event 201 level stuff where, like, they're basically giving the game away, and it's a must watch, I would say, for, like, how this, and then personally, this is where I think the cyber pandemic scare, because it'll be some kind of, like, evil other hacking group of, like, North Korea or China, Russia, like, I don't know, insert comic book villain country. And then it'll be the reason to, because how, like, China has its own internet that's, like, separate from American internet. I think that will be the reason to divide us, because, I mean, like, it's a global issue at this point, and, like, people are connected on the internet, but at the same time, the internet, it was, I mean, created by the military. It was not necessarily, for us to enjoy.
Right.
It's not like just to share memes on all day, every day. It's got military applications here, right? And what they're going to do with it, I think, will, like, kind of open people's eyes to, like, these, like, quote unquote, like, technological advancements. Like, I don't know if it was necessarily, like, I mean, it was an advancement in tech, yeah, but did it advance, like, any of our lives? Like, no. I think it's just it's easier to centralize, or, well, appear decentralized, but still be on, like, ultimately the same system. So yeah, the cyber pandemic stuff is definitely down the pipe, and it's very interesting how more and more people are going digital now. So God knows how that'll affect people who are totally caught up in their fucking screen world.
Mm-hmm. Damn, crazy. Well, I think that's a good end point. Spencer, I really appreciate you coming through. This was fantastic. I don't think we lifted anyone's spirits, but we might have notified anybody. We might have notified some people,
well,
right?
You know what? Okay, can we end on a positive note then?
Yes,
because
we love that.
If anything, all this has proven is that even with, like, all the lies and all our very high-strung petty bourgeois friends who went along with the COVID narrative and, like, started snitching on people, asking, oh, why are people out? Even amidst all this madness, and the people who've been acting terribly and selling out humanity is still not broken. Humanity is still fighting back, and humanity is not going away, even just because the billionaires say so doesn't make it so. And that's why I think it's why people need to be, like, less spectator-like and a little bit more realize that, like, hey, if you just say no, like, there's more people that agree with you. It's all in a lot of people's heads that they're, just because people on Reddit say something, like, people on Reddit live in basements, like, you don't have to worry about people like that. You don't, like, those aren't real people working every day. It's humanity won't just, like, lie down, even in the face of the worst it's been through yet, and worst yet to come. People aren't going to lie down and die. And, like, if you can't understand what side you're on at this point, like, and see through, like, these people that have maybe been brought up as trusted figures that have been selling you, like, total lies about a virus, total lies about everything else, and realize that, yeah, there's actually, that's one big influencer, yeah, but there's also, like, billions of people that believe the truth. So, what side are you really on here?
Yeah.
Bam.
Put,
Yeah. So okay, Spencer. I mean, this is your first time on. I can't say it'll be your last, because I might have to have you on again. Sometime.
I would love to.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic time. You can follow Spencer on Twitter. He's at Spencer Latu. Just Who'd you pay for that name? You just got your name on Twitter like that?
Yes,
that's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. I do too, by the way, but I'm just saying I didn't pay anybody for that. But do you like write anything? I feel like you're almost not, you're wasting all this knowledge, man. You're not writing.
I need to write. Yeah, I've been pushed into action, and I just need to do my part for the cause. And like just been too focused on like social media stuff, and I think it's just time to just put all that away and just worry about what's important.
Threads aren't the same, man. You got to put some stuff out there. It's not the same. So that's good, man. I appreciate you coming through. This is Rare Candy Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Rare Candy Pod 1. He's at CryptoSci. I'm at Glenn Rockney, and we appreciate you guys for coming through. This episode's a little delayed. This is on Memorial Day. It's going to come out next Monday. We just dropped an episode today, so I don't think anything was too time sensitive on here. I'm pretty sure the problems we talked about today will still exist next Monday. I hope they don't.
I hope they don't.
I hope they don't. That would be awesome if this episode, if I just scrapped it. If I was just like,
what are the odds?
This is dumb. Why did we say all that?
They changed their mind.
No, they're listening via Zoom headquarters right now. All right, Spencer. Well, we appreciate you coming through. Everybody have a good week. This is Rare Candy Podcast.
Peace.
All right, guys.